Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us for today's program, History at High Noon, Subpar Parks, with our guests Amber Scher and Addie Ladner. My name is Stacy and I handle adult education here at the North Carolina Museum of History. And if you enjoy today's program, we invite you to head over to the museum's website at ncmuseumofhistory.org, where you can learn more about our upcoming programs, exhibits, and digital resources. This is also where you can find more information about shopping our wonderful museum shop and joining our North Carolina Museum of History Associates. Our associates and foundation provide crucial funding and support to the museum, which, in addition to many other things, helps make programming like today's program possible. As a special part of today's program, you can purchase your own signed copy of Amber's book, Subpar Parks, America's Most Extraordinary National Parks and Their Least Impressed Visitors, by either coming into the museum or visiting the museum shop's website at ncmuseumofhistoryshop.com. We also have complimentary issues of Walter Magazine, which features the article about Amber's work, and those are here in the museum as well. We would like to thank those of you who kindly donated funds towards today's program. We do our best to keep our programs free to attend, but there are costs associated with keeping these series going, and we just continue to be so appreciative of your generous support of the museum. So it's my honor to introduce today's speakers, Amber Scher, illustrator and graphic designer, and Addie Ladner, associate editor for Walter Magazine. Addie is the associate editor of Walter, Raleigh's Arts and Cultural Magazine. Originally from Mississippi's Gulf Coast, she moved to Raleigh in 2010. At Walter, Ladner writes digital content, runs its social media channels, and works to unearth the untold stories of the city for the print issue, such as discovering that online sensation Amber Scher of Subpar Parks lived right here in Raleigh. Amber Scher is an illustrator and graphic designer based in the capital city. After several years as a professional graphic designer working on hand lettering and illustration on the side, Scher left her job in graphic design to pursue illustration full-time. As an avid hiker and backpacker, she spends lots of time in local, state, and national parks, which inspired this project and a book. So I believe that Addie, you're going to lead us off. I'm going to turn things over to you. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. Thanks, Stacy. I'm going to pull up our first slide. Actually, Amber's going to pull up our first slide. As Stacy mentioned, I work at Walter Magazine, and if you're not familiar, we are Raleigh's Arts and Culture Magazine. We try to focus a lot on those deep-rooted stories, history, food, nature. You might recognize some places in the History Museum that we've been happy to cover lately. We really try to focus on stories that you're not necessarily going to get online or on social media, which is sort of what led me to Amber. And we're going to talk much more about her than myself in the magazine today. But if you're not familiar with her, a few years ago, what year did the
end of 2019?
She created this hilarious viral series of national park posters, sort of mocking some of the one-star reviews. And I just remember seeing them everywhere on
that was crazy.
BuzzFeed and Washington Post. And I just thought they were so funny, even for someone that isn't as familiar with the national parks as I am the North Carolina parks. But I kind of just wanted to know who the person was behind these hilarious posters. And I learned that she lived in Raleigh. And I thought it would be a good opportunity for us at Walter to cover her and sort of share her story and get to know who the person was behind all these cool graphics taking over the internet. And then I was very hopeful that she might consider doing some North Carolina ones, because I felt like we have so many great state parks here. We have the beach, we have the mountains. We'll talk more about that. And she did. And we can, let's see, should we do next slide? So this is her, and this is the story that we ran. And I think this would be a good time to sort of hear from Amber and about her work and how she got where she is today. I think it's safe to assume your upbringing, traveling a lot, sort of informed her career choices and how this this project came to fruition. So I'm going to let her talk a little bit about herself, and then we can talk more about the parks and the project.
Yeah. So I'm Amber. I grew up with a dad in the military. He was in the Navy. And so we moved around a lot. And everywhere we lived, we were always exploring parks in the area. I went to a lot of different parks when I was young as we traveled around. And then we were being stationed in Italy after living in Hawaii for a year. And my parents decided to have our car sent to California so that we could road trip across the US for the summer before we had to head to our next station in Italy. And so we did the Grand Canyon and parks in Utah and just all across the US. And I was in love with it. It was just immediate. So yeah, it's been a huge part of my childhood. I feel like every time we traveled when I was a kid, it always included a park. So I've always had that love of parks. And as I got older and became an adult and could do things on my own, I found friends who were also into that and started doing more and more stuff, more intense hikes, backpacking trips. Last year I tried canyoneering. So yeah, just constantly loved being outside. And I was looking for an illustration project to sort of keep me illustrating and challenging me. And I knew I wanted to draw parks or something related to the parks. And I was trying to find some kind of angle, particularly humor, because I'm very sarcastic, that could make it a little bit different and not just like another version of the beautiful park posters that already exist. And I found some 1-star reviews, and it was just kind of like, boom, there it is. That's the thing. And yeah, it's been kind of crazy from there.
So funny. Backing up a little bit, I remember you saying you never claimed to be from anywhere
Yeah.
when I was interviewing you. And then to that note, you also said whenever you need respite or like you're stressed, you end up at a park.
Yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head the number of places you lived before, let's say, college or high school?
Let's see, I think I went to like 11 different schools by then. But I think we lived in like technically maybe 8 different places. I'm trying to add it up quickly. But yeah, it was kind of all over the place. Because even when my dad retired from the Navy, when I was in middle school, we still wound up moving a bunch because he happened to retire right before 9/11. And then, everything with the economy was going on from there. So it was kind of jumping jobs, trying to figure out what his civilian life was going to be. So yeah, our family still moved a lot even after the military phase of our lives was over. So yeah, but parks have always been kind of where I want to go, even if it's just, down to Pullen to go for a run or sit by the water. I just love hanging out in parks.
Yeah. Okay, so you studied design in Nebraska.
I did.
And then ended up in DC and then back to Raleigh. Do you want to talk a little bit about your creative profession? And then I thought it would be really cool to learn about the vetting process for the 1-star reviews and how you picked that. And then if I remember correctly, you just wanted to do something on the side and you shared them on Instagram.
Yes.
You never anticipated it turning into this whole business.
Not at all. I kind of thought like, oh, maybe I'll get some cool like freelance clients out of this and like pay for my trips to the parks with this new side income. And it definitely took off much more than that. I was not expecting it to become such its own thing. So I went to school in Nebraska. I studied sort of a combination of advertising and graphic design. And actually after school, my parents had moved to Greensboro while I was in college. So I lived with them for a little while after school. And then I actually got a job as a nanny because I couldn't find anything doing what I wanted.
That's important work.
Yeah. So I was living up in Pennsylvania as a nanny, thinking my end goal was like, I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to work in advertising. And then I realized I really didn't like New York. And so I wound up moving to DC. I started dating a really good friend from high school, and he was living there, and things got serious. So I moved to DC. And took a job working in marketing at a nonprofit. I was doing a lot of design work there. And that's when I started doing like hand lettering and illustration on the side, just to like give me a creative outlet. And then I moved down here. We got married and I moved down here to work as a graphic designer doing like wedding stationery. Quickly learned weddings were not really my jam. If you love weddings, that's awesome. I super don't. So found out that wasn't for me. Took a job with a local design firm here. It was amazing. I loved it a lot, but I think I'm one of those people who can't ever have one job. I always have to kind of have something going on the side that creatively interests me. And so I just was illustrating on the side on my coworker's iPad at lunch every day, just like trying to do something creative. But I wanted that structure, and that's where Subpar Parks came in. And within just a few months, it had ballooned to this place where I was like, I think I have to quit my job and like go all in on this and see what happens. So here we are.
And let's talk about a few of these places. I feel like you have experienced some of these national parks more than I have. And then also about specifically picking the 1-star reviews. I remember you telling me you almost started a trend of people adding their own 1-star reviews, which was hard. And also wanting to speak more to the park itself in terms of picking the 1-star reviews and not necessarily how the park was managed.
Yeah. So obviously, if you want to spend time going through 1-star reviews of national parks, you will find a lot of things that, kind of are valid complaints sometimes, the state of the bathrooms or how easy it is to find information about different things you want to do, or the accessibility. So there are a lot of issues that that's way above my pay grade. I'm not here to make a comment on how parks are managed, because I know there's so much that goes into that. And it just doesn't quite have the same spirit. So from the beginning, I knew I wanted to try to find reviews that seemed genuine. There are definitely some people have the actual reviewers have come forward and made it clear they were kidding, which is fine. I expected that would happen, but
they reached out to you.
Yeah, a couple have.
Wow.
But generally, I wanted to just try to make sure that they felt genuine, or even if I could tell it was a little sarcastic, that it was just a funnier way of saying something that people were genuinely expressing. Like the Joshua Tree one, I know that was a sarcastic review. It said, the only thing to do here is walk around the desert. But there were some genuine reviews where people were just complaining about it just being a desert. So that was a funnier phrasing. So I took it, and people do really complain about that. So I really wanted it to be focused on nature and people not having a good time with nature, and not any of the sort of bureaucratic or political or, management type of stuff.
And from there, we decided to do some North Carolina State Park ones, which we thought we could go into a little bit, because I think we both are in agreement here that the state of North Carolina has one of the best park systems. We're biased at this point, but we have the mountains and the coast, and even in the middle of the state, the Piedmont region, there's just so many wonderful parks. So much history, and we got really excited for you to do your research and then us to share them with our community. And then similarly to the first round you did of the national state parks, we had a ton of readers that wanted them as postcards and posters, and you made it happen. So I wanted to ask you a few questions about the parks that you picked here for the North Carolina Parks Subpar series. Which ones, how did you go about picking those? And then we can talk a little bit about your favorites. Your favorite camping spots and trails.
So when we did 5, because for some reason 5 is my favorite number. So whenever I've done a short series like Canada or Australia or wherever, it always ends up being 5. It just is what it is. So I think we had decided 5 was the right number. And so then within that, I really wanted us to try to capture just all the different types of parks there are. I mean, North Carolina, like you said, it's such a neat state because we're pretty small if you look at all the Western states, how much bigger they are. Of course, they have so many more parks than us, but for being such a small state, and especially if you live in the central part of the state, you can get to any of these places within a few hours. So North Carolina is really unique in that, no matter where you live, you're never that far from any of the terrain that North Carolina has to offer. And it's wild that we go from like beaches, like places like Cape Hatteras being like the first national seashore in the country, to like Mount Mitchell, which is like the highest point east of the Mississippi. Like
Yeah.
we have so many extremes in sort of a way. And it was fun to really kind of highlight all the different types of parks North Carolina has to offer.
What would be your favorite North Carolina state park?
That's really such a hard question. I mean, if we're staying true to like things that are called state park, I feel like this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I love Umstead. I think people think of it as like, oh, it's good for a park that's in a city, even though it's kind of outside. But I don't know. It's so peaceful, even though you can sometimes hear like the planes landing.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think because I lived in DC for so long, it was always really magical for me to go to Rock Creek Park, which is this massive, massive park managed by NPS actually in DC. But it's like you walk there from the city and you're just in the woods and it's quiet, and it was kind of amazing. And I think that's why I love places like Umstead, because it's a great reminder that like you don't have to drive way out west into like what feels like the middle of nowhere to have that like peace and quiet and like connect with nature. Like Umstead is right there, and it's so easy to get to, and it's so lovely.
Yes. And Umstead has so many things, trails and a lake and bike routes and horseback riding, and so much to do. And then the review that you found was all that's there are trees,
which is true, but one of them fell down and they carved it into a beautiful piece of art. Like it's so neat.
What about your favorite camping spot in North Carolina?
Oh, that is a tough question. Honestly, so I've camped kind of all around, but so my husband and I have land out in Western North Carolina, which is obviously currently my favorite place to camp, just because like I know I'm gonna get the spot. Nobody else can go there. But honestly, any national or state forest and I'm in, because I really like to do sort of more primitive camping. Campgrounds are wonderful. Like I've camped at Umstead just for like nights where we're testing our gear. I've camped down in Cape Hatteras. I really want to do one of the camping situations where you have to like take the ferry out to the beach and like you can't come back till the next day. But I haven't gotten to do that yet. But yeah, I mean, we have amazing camping everywhere, so it's really hard to say, but really a national or state forest where it's a bit more remote and primitive is my jam.
So Cape Lookout or Shackelford Banks is where you could take
I need to do
the
it.
ferry, and maybe one day she'll do
so
another round of NC subpar parks. Favorite easiest trail and then most rigorous trail in North Carolina?
I mean, I think a lot of the trails in Umstead are wonderful because I mean, some of them have a lot of like roots and rocks in the ground. So if you don't have great balance, it may not be the best. But I think the nice thing about Umstead is that a lot of the trails are pretty easy. I think it's called Rough Ridge out near Asheville. That was like probably the first hike I ever did in North Carolina. And it's one of those that whenever I'm in the area, I always go back. It's a bit of a rock scramble, but the views are just amazing. So that is probably an all-time fave.
Raven Rock, how did you choose that one for us to do the North Carolina subpar parks? And then let's talk about that one a little. I feel like that one is a hidden gem because it is so close to here.
And that's why I chose it, because I kind of, I do a lot of hiking in Umstead and like Eno, and those are obviously wonderful parks. They're very, woodsy with bodies of water. And so I kind of like had this idea that like, that's what this area, is like, it's just trees and water. And so my friend and I decided one day, okay, we want somewhere new. We haven't been, let's go down to Raven Rock. And it was just so much more rugged than I expected. Like it felt a lot like what a lot more of Western North Carolina feels like. And so I just loved it. It just kind of shocked me. I looked at pictures and I thought like, oh, people are really like zoomed in on these rocks or like whatever. And I got there and I was like, this is like kind of like the river is huge there. I mean, it's amazing. So if you haven't been.
And is it the one that has a lot of it is the stairs? the trail
Stairs.
down.
I don't know. I can't remember exactly which trail we did because the day we went, it had rained and a lot of the trails that mountain bikers are allowed to use
Oh,
were
okay.
closed. So I don't remember. I know we ended up having to call an audible and do a different trail than we had planned, and I'm not sure which one we ended up
I
on.
think
But I think there are a lot
yeah,
of
I think you
stairs.
can go down and get a really beautiful view, and you're kind of in this like secluded part of the
Mhm.
park. That is super cool. I wanted to check in with the chat because we've already had some people asking a few things. So I was just going to get caught up because I didn't want to miss any of these. I hope this is okay, Stacy. So we have lots of love. They purchased Amber's book after reading about it in the magazine. They loved it and shared it. Can we get a link to the story in Walter Magazine? Yes, I could probably do that right now. If you just bear with me. This is okay. And then, like Stacy said, I also have a stack of magazines that I was going to bring to the museum if people wanted the print copy. How do I get back to the chat?
Goodness. I think go back to Zoom. It'll just be there.
Okay, here we go. Okay, there's that. Let's see. Okay, lots of people have been giving the books. Oh, Stacy shared the article. I love how your illustrations are so evocative of the 1930s. Do feel like they're very retro.
Yeah.
We have your calendar and 2 park poster calendars exhibited together.
Amazing.
NC State parks are amazing. Yes, I agree. Our COVID project was to hike all 41. Oh, wow. That's impressive.
awesome.
We might have to save some of this discussion for after because I would love to hear about that. Did you go to the Great Falls NP on the Virginia or Maryland sides?
I only went to the Virginia side, which that's a very like people, it's contentious. People from Maryland like really declare the Maryland side is better. And people from Virginia are like, no,
Oh,
it's
interesting.
Virginia. Yeah, I never was able to make it to the Maryland side. I think that's a bit of a longer drive from DC. I can't quite remember, but yeah.
So let's look at the other 3 that we picked to be our North Carolina, our only subpar North Carolina state parks. One of these is my favorite, Jockey's Ridge. I just think it is.
I haven't been there.
It is. She has to go. And if anyone agrees, you're welcome to mention in the chat. It's in Nags Head. It's a just giant sand dune that was actually saved by a local mom who stood in front of a bulldozer who was going to, the bulldozer was planning to develop it for real estate, but it's the highest sand dune on the east. It's, I think, almost 400 acres. I wrote a note because I didn't want to misspeak. And 60 feet above sea level. There's a maritime forest there, and it has some of the most beautiful views.
Yeah.
And as a mom, it's a very good place to let your kids just
Run it out.
yeah, just get it out. And it's just really unique. The views there are incredible. There's lots of hang gliding that takes place. But to someone else, it's nothing other than a bunch of sand.
So sad.
So, and then the other 2 that you picked, which the Mount Mitchell, I definitely want to talk about because I have never experienced it with just bugs and even in this setting.
I haven't either, actually. And I've been up there a few times. I think the first time I went up there was when I stayed in Black Mountain for my 30th birthday. My friends and I, we didn't do the whole hike from like the base, but we went up there. And it's just like incredible. Even when you don't get the amazing view because it's socked in with fog, it's still really, really awesome. Like, and while you're there, you're standing at the highest point east of the Mississippi. Like, it's so neat.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't even know that I remember ever encountering a bug there. So it made me laugh that someone like their whole experience was summarized by bugs.
Yeah. So if y'all aren't familiar with Mount Mitchell, like Amber said, it's the highest point east of the Mississippi, and it's part of the Black Mountains, and the climate there is often more like Canada. It's very cold and very windy. A lot of times there's low visibility.
Mhm.
Some pretty gnarly hikes, in my understanding, which I have not done.
Yeah.
You might have.
I've done a few like from the peak. I've never done any from the base, just I've kind of hiked down and then back up. And I remember, I never remember trail names. I'm really terrible about that. But one that we did, I was like, I feel like I'm walking through like something from Star Wars,
Oh, that's
almost like Pacific Northwesty. Like there was a lot of moss and like, it was just so interesting and beautiful and not at all what I expected.
yes. So when I read this review, I almost envied this person that was
Mhm.
there
Yeah.
for the temperature to be enough for
Right?
like all of them to experience
My
bugs. 'Cause
birthday is August 30th, and I was wearing like leggings and a sweatshirt up
yes,
there.
it is so cold. I mean, you're at such a high elevation. I have it down here somewhere 6,700 feet up.
Mhm.
So it's another one of those places in the state where it's not a far drive to feel like you're in a completely different part of the country. It's way cool.
And supposedly, I saw something that apparently Mount Mitchell was like the inspiration for like the concept of state parks in
Oh,
general,
interesting.
which is
And
kind of
was it
cool.
the first North Carolina state park?
I think it was. I'm not 100% sure. What's the date on there? 1935. Yeah. Or 1915. Sorry, looking on the wrong one. Yeah, it must be. That's gotta be.
I think it was. I think I remember reading that. It was the first state park in 1915.
Yeah. So
Um,
really an amazing place,
Mhm.
beautiful.
Mhm.
And, you know, I am not a person who has any physical limitations. Like I can pretty much go do anything I set my mind out to do. But if you are a person who does, it's very accessible. Like you can
Mhm.
drive almost all the way to the top and then there's a paved path all the way to
Yes,
the
yeah,
peak. So
yeah.
it's something that truly anyone can go and enjoy. So
Mhm.
that's, I think, also what makes it really wonderful.
Yeah, that is such a good point. You could still experience the
Mhm.
highest point, even if you don't necessarily want to hike.
Yeah, which is definitely not true of everywhere. You know,
Yeah.
some peaks are just not, if you can't climb it, which are some things I'll never climb, but
Yes.
if you can't climb it, you can't go up there.
Yes, yes. That's a good segue to Hanging Rock,
Mm.
because when I was going to ask you about some of the more treacherous hikes that you've done in North Carolina, and I remember doing Hanging Rock, and it's not that bad of a hike, but I had a baby in the carrier
Oh,
and then a toddler, and I don't know if any of you have ever hiked to the peak at Hanging Rock, but there's a part of the hike where it's very narrow and it's very rocky, and I remember wondering what am I doing?
yeah.
But it's so beautiful.
I mean, I struggle with heights just when it feels really exposed, like you
Yeah.
could just fall.
Mhm.
And so Hanging Rock and even like the Rough Ridge area that I mentioned earlier out sort of near, I think it's just off the Blue Ridge Parkway actually.
Mhm.
Those both have like a little bit of that, especially because people like, as you see in this picture of the Hanging Rock view, people love to walk all the way out there and like have their
Yes.
iconic photo sitting there on the rock. And like, it's not always all connected. Like you have to step over little
Yes,
gaps.
yes. Oh, yes.
And,
I can
you
still
know,
remember this.
I think it's fine, but definitely makes me a little nervous sometimes. So there's definitely that just like that pit in your stomach, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yes, yes. I have a picture of my middle child at Hanging Rock, who is our daredevil. And I just had this moment where I just had to trust that she would be okay, because she just
Mhm.
wanted to sit
Yeah.
and take it all in. And we survived. And I lost some hair, but yeah, it's really beautiful. How did you come to pick that one? Because I feel like we had a handful of parks, but
Yeah.
you wanted to find you have so much integrity in finding the reviews that you think are real and that
Yeah.
you think speak to the people's experience of the park itself, like you said.
Yeah, so I think that was obviously when you get into some of the state parks, that becomes a bit more challenging just because national parks are so much more well known because often people come from really far away to visit them.
Mhm.
So there's a lot more reviews to sort through.
Mhm.
And so I think our initial list that we put together of like any of these would be good to include, let's narrow it down. A couple of them, I don't remember which ones, but a couple of them were narrowed down just by the fact that like I couldn't find a good review that I
Mhm.
felt was authentic.
Mhm.
But Hanging Rock again, like I wanted to show that like even though North Carolina is awesome because the mountains and the beach parks are so quick to get to kind of no
Mhm.
matter where you live, like that's not the only place to go. You know, like this would still be arguably very central in North Carolina. And it's still just like this epic view because you're kind of in like I guess the foothills is what you'd call it. And so you get this incredible like long view, but you're not, you know, way out at the western edge of North Carolina.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they have very good cabins there for people that aren't as hardcore as Amber with her camping and backpacking, and you can stay in a nice secure cabin where it's very warm.
Yes.
So since this story came out and since we sort of shared with our community the North Carolina Subparks series, and then hers, Amber also put together a book, which is even more funny reviews. But what I really liked is that she also took a deep dive into some of the spaces, history, and just really neat facts about them. And two of the landmarks that she covered are North Carolina, the Blue Ridge Parkway and Cape Hatteras. And I didn't know Cape Hatteras's history until I was reading it, that it had to be moved. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that, about Hatteras specifically, the history of that, and then also just sort of selecting some of these natural landmarks and putting them in the book.
Yeah, so Hatteras, Cape Hatteras, like I said earlier, I've camped out there. Probably only like 8 months or so into me living here, we did a camping trip out there. I'm not super my cup of tea from as far as campgrounds go, only because it is like a beach area. So the campsites are all very close together and there's nothing kind of separating them. And we had some loud people around us. So would have preferred, you know, even just something more like Umstead where there's some insulation from your neighbors. But it was still awesome because you could see from the campground, you could see the lighthouse at night.
Cool.
But yeah, I think a lot of people don't know that lighthouse didn't used to be where it currently is. And I think it's on YouTube. There's a documentary about how it was moved, and it is so wild. They kept it in one piece and like moved it from under the foundation with like hydraulic jacks. And I don't remember. I think it moved 2,900 feet from where it is. So, and it took like almost a month because they had to move it so slowly to not destroy the lighthouse. And I think in the documentary, they say that like, so it was obviously because of land erosion threatening the base of the lighthouse. And like where it is now is fine for now, but in the future, they might run into the same problem. But yeah, so really, really crazy. Just that alone is such a cool thing to know looking at this thing. But yeah, so I mean, Cape Hatteras is incredible. And it, like I said earlier, also, it was the first national seashore like in the United States. So it was the first seashore that was protected on that level, on that federal level. And then, of course, we have the Blue Ridge Parkway, which does go on forever, over 400 miles of forever, I think. And I love that one because even if like a lot of the reviews mention the traffic, obviously, if you go during foliage or if you go during like the rhododendron blooms, it's going to be, even if you just go on like a beautiful day, there's going to be a lot of traffic. But like, I kind of like to think of it as like, the traffic is an excuse for me to take this slow and really like look at what's around me. Because it's such a beautiful drive. It really is. And I hate the Linville Viaduct because I think it's terrifying. Like knowing what I know about how it's constructed and like, it was kind of like this feat of engineering and they had to like wait for like the technology to catch up to what they needed.
That's where everyone wants to get out.
Yes, I don't want to get out there. I'll drive it. Well, I'll sit in the passenger seat while someone else drives it. It just, for some reason, it scares me knowing it's like just kind of on the side of the mountain and not in it. But it's really cool because they were able to preserve everything that way. You know, they didn't have to, you know, blow anything up. So it's a really, really cool piece of engineering. I think the viaduct itself is also like the National Civil Engineering Society like designated it like a civil engineering landmark or something because it's so interesting. Yeah, it's a beautiful drive. If you've never done it, just any leg of it, just know that in the winter parts of it do close. So you
Mhm.
kind of have to
Yes,
pay attention to
yes.
that.
The
But,
visibility on the Blue Ridge
Yeah.
sometimes in the winter.
but that is something that I love about North Carolina too, is there are a lot of states where you kind of have to really consider what time of year you go places.
Mhm.
And I think most areas of North Carolina pretty much shine in all seasons.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
like there is never a part of North Carolina, like the Blue Ridge Parkway closes because of snow and ice, and like they're
Mhm.
not able to maintain the road in a safe way for people.
Mhm.
But other than that, like there's no area of North Carolina where you're like, that's totally closed. It's completely snowed in. You can't
Yeah.
go up there in the winter. And nothing's ever like, I mean, I enjoy the heat. So nothing's ever too
Yes,
hot for me. Whereas there are a lot of places where there are some seasonal hazards that you really
Mhm.
have to plan around. And the
Yeah.
nice thing about North Carolina is that's not super the case.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And if you want it to be a little cooler, you can go west.
Yeah,
You know, go to the
totally.
beach. I wanted to ask you, for people that haven't gotten in, I can tell already though, we have a ton of park enthusiasts here, which makes me so happy. But for people that haven't necessarily gotten into utilizing our parks here, what would be some good tips or nudges for them? Especially, like we've talked about places that have easier hikes than others, or camp, people that want to get into camping at our local state parks.
I mean, I think my biggest piece of advice would be to go local first. I have said that I think a lot of the 1-star reviews are for like a lot of national parks and everything are people who just didn't know what they were doing when they went there.
Mhm.
They don't, because when you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
So you might think like, oh, and people go to Arches, I can go to Arches.
Mhm.
You don't do any research, you show up, and then you realize like now they have a timed entry permit system that they're
Okay.
trying out this
Mhm.
year because it's been so crowded. So whoops, you can't get in.
Mhm.
Or if you do get in, whoops, I have brought my dog and I'm not
Mhm.
allowed to bring my
Mhm.
dog. Or that trail was way longer and harder than I thought it was going to
Mhm.
be. And so when you've also like traveled all that way, that just makes
Yeah.
it feel so awful.
Mhm.
And so I think, I didn't travel that far to go to parks by myself as an adult. Until I kind of knew more of what I was
Mhm,
doing. So I
mhm.
started in my local parks. I would just like meet friends at Rock Creek
Mhm.
Park in DC, or sometimes we'd take weekends out to
Mhm,
Shenandoah and
mhm.
rent a cabin out there.
Mhm.
So I think, and especially living somewhere like North Carolina where there are so many wonderful parks, even like the local parks around here, if you live in the Raleigh area,
Mhm.
are incredible. Like just
Yeah.
go spend a day in Pullen. It doesn't have to be a crazy hike for you to get, acclimated to being outside and wandering among the trees and feeling safe doing that.
Yeah.
But I think North Carolina in particular has a lot of really great parks for beginners,
Mhm,
just to
mhm.
kind of get their sea legs under them a
Yes,
bit.
yes, I agree.
And just ask questions. The visitor centers and the rangers are there for you.
Mhm.
They love it. They love to be helpful. Don't be mean to them. Just be nice and inquisitive and ask questions. They love it. When I was doing my research for the book, I reached out to a lot of rangers to get sort of any stories they had
Mhm.
or tips or tricks for visiting that park. And so many of them were so happy to talk about that with me,
Mhm,
even though
mhm.
like I wasn't actively planning a trip there.
Yeah.
That's their job. That's what they love
Mhm.
doing. And that's what they're there for. So definitely use your resources, talk to people who've been to the places you
Mhm.
want to go.
Mhm.
Really just make sure you get a feel for what you're getting into before you go.
Mhm.
But also know that like most parks are like at least have something that's for beginners.
Yes, most do have an easy trail.
Mhm.
And then also camping ones, sites
Yeah,
with bathrooms nearby.
absolutely.
And
Like Umstead is a great place for a first time camper
Mhm.
because it's very close to things. So if something goes wrong or you
Yeah.
forgot something, like before the park closes, you could run out to Target in Briar Creek and
Yeah,
get what you
yeah.
need. And it's very like you drive up, there's a nice level pad for setting
Mhm.
up your tent. There are bathrooms.
Mhm.
They have quiet hours. It's very, I would say that's very beginner accessible.
Mhm.
But again, just like talk to the rangers at wherever you're thinking you might want to try camping, just to get a feel for like, what kind of things do I need? Am I looking at like, I need to buy some new gear, or can I borrow this from friends or rent it from somewhere? Or is this super specialized and I need like nice, expensive camping
Yeah.
equipment for backpacking type of thing?
Yes,
So yeah, ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
I like it. All righty. I think, should we start taking some
Yeah, I think
questions?
I'm
I was gonna
ready.
also check in on the chat. I feel like Amber and I could talk
We can stop
for
sharing.
a long time about camping in the state parks.
Definitely. You would
I
probably
was thinking
want me to be quiet.
No, I was actually thinking, I feel like the Eno River State Park is,
Oh, it's so good.
how you feel about Umstead is how I feel about that one being so close.
I
and
do. I mean,
accessible and-
pretty much on any given day. So my friend and I, who I travel with a lot, and we do a lot of our outdoorsy stuff together. We are training for a backpacking trip. In May, we're going down into the Grand Canyon, and it's always Umstead or Eno is kind of our
Mhm.
like, let's put our packs
Oh,
on
nice.
and be those
Yeah.
weirdos where people are like, why are you wearing a pack through this park? Those are our training parks. I love it so much.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi, so we do have quite a few questions actually, so I'm just gonna start rolling. The first one is, can we buy the state park posters somewhere?
Yes, they are on my website. It's ambersharedesign.com. I believe actually, if you just go to subparparks.com, it also forwards to my website. So I have all the parks I've done, including the North Carolina ones. They are in postcard, sticker, and 8x10 print form.
Okay, so I shared that earlier. I'll share it again though, in just a second.
Oh, and I'm
sorry,
also
just
going to
scroll.
drop some postcards and stickers off at the museum for anyone to just grab if you go in to buy the book, you can have those. So I'll drop those there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's so nice.
Absolutely.
Our next question is, Amber, do you typically draw like in an Art Nouveau style, or what kind of style would you call your illustrations?
But I hate this question only because like that's such a hard, like as an artist, I don't like to like box myself into some style. Like I draw in the style of Amber. It's like sometimes a little cartoony and a little retro, usually very colorful. Some people have been like, do you always have to use those colors? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I like colors. Yeah, so it's hard for me because I feel like I take a lot of inspiration from a lot of different eras of art too. So yeah, there's definitely like a bit of a retro influence on there from a lot of different areas that could be encapsulated under the retro umbrella. But it's kind of just it all came in here and just that's what came out.
The style of Amber. I like that.
It was a fellow artist asking that.
Oh, love it.
So Maria would like to know kind of a little bit more about your process of creating the illustrations.
Yeah, so a lot of times, because I have been to a lot of these parks, I'm just looking at my own photos from my time there. If I haven't been there, I look at a lot of photos on the internet. And if I'm doing that, I always try to make sure I'm as like derivative as possible, like not pulling from any one photo, but just kind of like looking at a whole ton of them and just getting the general, like, this is the view I want to look at. Let me look at a ton of photos of this. Ooh, I like these colors. I like this kind of composition. So if I'm taking inspiration from photos that aren't mine, I always try to like alter it a lot, as much as you can alter it and it still be like that same mountain. But yeah, so I start with just generally a really rough sketch. I don't spend a lot of time refining my sketch, especially now that I work more on the iPad doing digital illustration. I just don't find that to be very helpful for me anymore. So usually I jump pretty quickly into like blocking in the colors, like the major colors of objects. And then it's just a lot of time layering in like different shadows and like trying to get, if I'm drawing a mountain, I'm doing a lot of like shadows and darker colors to create those like cuts in the rocks, highlights as well, and then just a lot of texture. So I usually max out my layers in Procreate, if you're familiar with what that means. Yeah, so it's just a lot of layers of shadows and textures to kind of give things that depth and life that I'm looking for.
What's interesting, you were telling me when you were doing the posters for the national parks, you first did that and then you were like, oh, I want a little caption because you wanted it to be about your illustrations.
Yeah.
But you felt like you needed some words on there and you
Mhm.
didn't want to go with just the name of the state park.
Yeah, that's how the 1-star reviews kind of came about. Is I was like, because I also started illustrating by way of doing hand lettering, so I wanted to include that in the project, and I was like, I need some kind of text, and that's how I found the 1-star reviews.
So cool.
And this amazing thing was born, which is really exciting. So Sherry says, I'm on the Park Advisory Council for Cliffs of the Neuse. Any experiences there?
No,
Oh, I think I have been. I feel like I have been to that one.
I
I feel
have
like there's really
not.
good bike trails there. I need to confirm that though.
yeah, I haven't been there.
Does she want to tell us a little more
Yeah.
about it? We have some, we love Cliffs of the Neuse. I want to confirm that I've been here before I assume I have.
I mean, I'm gonna go now. Oh, that's like a perfect kind of distance away for like a day trip when my friends and I are looking for that. So I'm
I
gonna
wonder if
mentally
I wonder
file
if
that
I-
away.
I want to see.
So last question, and possibly a difficult one. You've hiked all over the place. You've been to all these parks. What's your favorite one in the US? Do you have a favorite?
I feel like people hate this answer. I'm sorry to say that it's not a North Carolina park, but nothing against North Carolina.
That's okay.
I love
Yeah.
all North Carolina parks. It's the Grand Canyon, but not like the huge, I mean, no shade to anyone who this is their experience, but my favorite Grand Canyon is not the Grand Canyon where you just like kind of can drive up to the overlook and just look out. My favorite Grand Canyon requires many miles of hiking down a lot of switchbacks to the river. And I think the reason that I love it is just because it is so different than it initially looks from the rim. Like if you look out from the rim, you kind of see some green, but it looks mostly dead. It looks just mostly like this vast sort of crevice in the earth. But when you actually go down, it's so full of life. There are so many interesting things to see. There are trees growing where like trees should not be able to grow. And it's such an incredible place. I just love it. It's my favorite.
That's awesome. That sounds incredible. You're actually not the first person I've heard that from, that they would much rather hike down into the Grand Canyon than to hang out on the rim where everybody else hangs out. So that's really interesting to hear that though.
I will say, if you are just like looking to hang out on the rim though, go to the North Rim. The North Rim is so interesting. I went for the first time last year and it is such a different place than the South Rim, just in terms of crowds, but also it's got like aspen trees and the elevation is just entirely different. So the temperature is different, the vegetation is different. There are bison up there. It's wild. It's so different.
I just saw someone asking about getting Walter magazine sent to their house. We have a subscription option, but if you're looking for some specific issues, like the one with her story, I'm happy to mail you that. Or if you just want to email me, Louise, we can talk about that. I think Stacy shared my email in the chat.
I'll do that one more time. Hold on.
Okay. Any more questions? I think we're doing good on the time.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about this all day, so.
I know I had like I want you to go camp at New River State Park.
Oh, okay. I'm down.
They have a walk-in option,
Ooh.
so it feels more your style.
Yeah, I try to get away from people when I camp. So a lot of campgrounds are not my jam, but yeah.
So you like the bag, like you like to just bring a bag and that's it, and you walk there.
Pretty much. So my friend and I camp, we're about to leave in May, and we will live out of my Xterra for a month. I built a platform, a bed in the back of it. So sometimes we just drive off down a dirt road and find a place to pull off, and that's where we sleep for the night.
Marcy says, thank you, Marcy.
That's awesome. Love that.
That is very inspiring. I have the new River State Park. I say you walk in, your car is like a short hike from you.
That's
But-
nice though, because you can
So
like
it
keep things there
feels-
that you need.
I mean, it's kind of like a long, it's not an easy, it's because like when you have your stuff, but I would
Mhm.
love to get into that type of camping.
That's probably honestly kind of a good way for somebody who wants to get into backpacking but
Mhm.
is intimidated by backpacking is to do
Mhm.
something like that where you leave the safety of your car, like you don't
Yeah.
have all those resources right there, but if something happens, you can bail and get right back to your car with ease.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the North Carolina parks have so many different options, like depending on
Yeah.
what type of camping you want to do.
Truly, our parks are just incredible. There's so much to see and so much to do, and it's a drop in the bucket what I've done here. So.
Yeah, I mean, and like Cliffs of the News, I really appreciate that suggestion. If anyone has any suggestions of parks around the state. we'd
Yeah,
love to hear
email
them.
Addie your favorite parks and then she'll send them to me and I'll file them all away
Mhm.
and go there.
And even one, even like you mentioned, our national forest.
Yeah,
And
And like DuPont State Forest is incredible. It has some of the biggest waterfalls like I've
See, I have
ever
not been to
seen
that
in a
one.
not national park. Like amazing. I actually think what's it called? Hunger Games. Hunger Games was filmed.
oh, interesting.
So some of the waterfalls, if you're a Hunger Games fan, you'll recognize.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But it's so beautiful. And I thought from the parking situation that it was going to be really crowded. But the thing I love about parks like that is there are so many spots to go to that like even when a place looks really crowded at first, you can always find solitude.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Oh,
yeah,
I'm gonna have to add that one.
it's really beautiful.
Let's see.
Oh, we're getting lots of
Mer-
suggestions.
Oh, this
Love
is
it.
good. I need to write. I need to write these. Oh yeah. Merchants Mill Pond. Where is that?
Merchants Mill Pond. That sounds really familiar. But then my brain immediately thought of Robertson Mill Pond, which is I like to go paddleboarding there. Oh, that looks really similar. Hmm.
I am not familiar with that one either.
Oh, Congaree is so great. I went when I was a kid before it was Congaree National Park. I think it was Congaree National Monument maybe back then, but yeah. I lived in Charleston for a long time, so been to a lot of things in
Oh,
that area.
cool. Gates County, fantastic times 10. Oh, canoe through Spanish Moss.
Oh, I
would
love
love
that. I bought an inflatable stand-up paddleboard. It was a COVID purchase last year. And I have had so
Yes.
much fun going out. I mean, I already loved going to like Lake Wheeler and Lake Johnson and even Falls Lake to go kayaking. But now I have this stand-up paddleboard so I can go anywhere I want that you have like, I used to have to rely on rentals, but now I own this weird
Oh.
thing.
That's awesome. I need to go there.
All right. Well, I think those are all of our questions from the chat. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today and sharing your incredible work with us, both Amber, your book and your all of your illustrations, and Addie, Walter. Just thank you guys so much. This has been really cool and just so
Oh,
special.
thank you for the invite, Stacy. We were both a little nervous.
Yeah.
And we survived for
It
people who
didn't show.
whose job. We were talking before this about our jobs are we're just so used to being behind things, like behind a notebook, behind a computer, and we're
Yeah.
really happy with that.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you for trusting us to do this.
Yeah. It's been wonderful.
And thank you guys for joining us today. Just as a reminder, if you haven't checked out Amber's book and or Walter magazine, we invite you to head down to the museum and grab your copy of either or both. And we hope that you'll join us for our next History at High Noon River Bridge happening on Wednesday, May 11th, as part of our exciting new exhibit, River Bridge Sunken Secrets, which opens on April 16th here at the museum. We hope to see you guys soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.